Welcome back to Sunday Agenda. Katharina Stuber came to Australia in 2001 from a small town in Germany to study architecture and photography. From the first moment she saw the Sydney Opera House, she fell in love with it. As she writes in her book, "For a heartbeat, the world stopped and it was only me and this magnificent sculpture." From then on, she had a dream to take photographs of the Opera House and show them to its architect, Jorn Utzon. She talked to us earlier about how that dream came true. Katharina Stuber, thank you for joining us on Sunday Agenda.
Hello, Helen. So
Now,
nice to be here.
a tribute to Jorn Utzon, Sydney Opera House, is a beautiful coffee table book with some magnificent photos. It really was a labour of love. Can you give us a little bit of a picture of how you really had to chase down to meet and get the approval of the great architect to go ahead with this book?
Well, I came out to Sydney to study architecture and obviously fell in love with the Opera House, which is very easy. And before I left to go back to Europe, I decided I wanted to meet the architect because I had all these questions in my head and just basically wanted to approach him from an architectural point of view. And I went back to Mallorca where my parents lived at that time, and I know that Jorn lived there as well. So I spoke to a few architects, tried to find him. That didn't work out. And I kept on going for 3 years, always having this dream in the back of my mind, thinking, how am I going to make contact without being another fan, being someone...
Because he would be approached a lot. He would have been approached a lot.
Exactly. I was just always thinking, how can I make a difference? How can I be different to the other people? And eventually I just sat down and I wrote a long email to his son, Jan, attached photographs, and I said, I just want to thank your father for what he has given us, what he has created. It's beautiful. And 3 days later I had an email from Jorn Utzon saying, you should call my father, and if you're in Sydney, we should meet up. And I was over the moon, of course.
What a lucky break that was. Now, most visitors, when they come to Sydney, fall in love with the Opera House, and certainly Australians love it. But what about it grabbed you enough to turn it into virtually an obsession?
Well, it's a positive obsession, I hope. It's, I think it is the energy that I feel there. I just feel I can lose myself, and I get lost and lose track of time and space when I walk around, and I think it's probably Jorn Utzon's presence and his love in the building.
Well, you spent a lot of time, you just said how difficult it was really to get onto him in the first place, but you spent many years since you took the first photos to wait for the right light, to, really get the pictures you really wanted to put before Jorn Utzon himself. And when you did, he knew all about your work and your love for the Opera House, didn't he?
Well, I sent him a letter first, and I inserted obviously photographs and explained what I had done, etc., etc. So when I then finally went to his house to visit him, he knew straight away who I was, and that was lovely, that was beautiful.
Well, it was extremely sad for Australia that he never returned to Australia to see the finished Opera House. It must have also been sad for you that he passed away before your book was published.
That was really terrible because I felt I lost the race against time, really, and it was always my wish to show him the book, and I had visualized it how Jan and I give Jorn our book, a tribute to him and a dedication to him. And I must say that really changed the whole energy of the project in November when he passed away. And for a few weeks I wasn't quite sure how to handle it and where to take it because...
Did you think it might have fallen apart, the project?
No,
or were
I
you
wasn't.
Still confident
I was
it would
still
go ahead?
confident, going ahead. But I just thought, I don't want it to be something that now that he's passed away, we come out with this book. This wasn't the intention. And obviously Jan and I, we spoke a lot, and we started working on the layout, etc., etc. And I just needed some time, I guess, to mourn and to be sad, and then turn it around and say, okay, now it has to be even more beautiful than before.
Well, you mentioned Jorn's son, Jan. He also contributes a huge amount to the book.
Yes,
he writes a
yes.
lot about his memories of what the Opera House meant for their family.
Yes.
He writes about the tortured journey of the actual building through Australian politics, and also his memories of Sydney. How valuable was it to you and the book to have this great contribution from Jan?
It's like beyond words. I mean, this is bigger than I would have ever have imagined, or bigger than I ever dreamed. And Jan became a friend. So over the past 3 years, we became really good friends. And all these little anecdotes, I think they complement the images. So the book wouldn't be the same without these stories. And I'm very pleased and happy now that we have this book and that I can finally share with people the experiences that I've made, or these little stories that I have heard.
Well, Jan and his father went through, and I quote, these almost poetic images, and were delighted to see such a fresh new approach in capturing the moods of the structure in still photographs. That's some recommendation for your work, isn't it?
It is amazing, and like I said, I had no idea back then when I took the photos. They were just for my own record as an architectural student. So for a long time, I didn't even show these photos to anyone. And when I started, people said, hey, they're good, you should do something about it. But then receiving the acknowledgement and the compliment from the architect was just overwhelming, really.
Well, one of the compliments that he gave you, and it was next to the lovely image of you photographed between Jorn and Jan, which is a fabulous image. But Jorn Utzon said that many of the images remind me of my first conceptual sketches for the shells.
Yes, I think what happened was I didn't go out to take the Opera House as a whole building. I really went into detail, and I think for me, photography and art, architecture is very much about life and relationship. So when we look at relationships, we need to go into detail. We can't just stay on the surface and on the outside. And I wanted to show the Opera House in all its different moods. That was what really attracted me, and what was kind of like a little challenge inside of me, where I thought, okay, it could look this way, but it could also look like a shark, or it could look like boats. You know, it has so many different perspectives and different angles and components. And also the mood it presents itself in can be sometimes very mystic, or sometimes just a feminine softness, you know. And then again, you have the grounded, protective strength of a male. So it has all these different moods and different faces that I wanted to show.
One of the pictures, the caption was "On Top of the World," and it has Jorn Utzon saying, in some of her photos, Katerina has captured the Opera House and its spirit in ways I've never seen before. Wonderful, he says. I mean, you keep getting these great accolades from the man himself.
I know. It's like I said, I think it happens because I had no intention. It just happened. It was, like you said, you know, it was a labor of love, or it was passion.
So it was a work of passion of yours,
yeah, it was passion.
Too.
And I think if we are honest and if we are true, good things will happen. And I think that's probably what he felt. I was no danger. I was not a journalist. I was not interviewing him. I was just a student that fell in love with his building.
Do you have a favourite photograph? There's a marvellous one at the front of the book before the acknowledgements where you've written, "Only with belief can we see what lies before us, even when others doubt or fail to share the same vision."
Yes, I definitely have a favourite. I mean, the cover is definitely one of my favourites, just because it shows the Sydney Triangle, the marriage between the Opera House and the bridge and Luna Park, and they're the Sydney icons. So that's definitely one of my favourite photographs.